You found the skeleton. How would you tell it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
Hey everybody, welcome to Dapper Reacts number 99, Bible Interpretation, Tyson versus Ross, round 3. Looks like this is going to be the final round. Sorry that the show started while there was still a little bit of a side conversation going, but that's okay. That's why I give people warnings. But hey, I'm here.
Sorry.
It's okay. Don't worry about it. Of course, I know you have to because you're Canadian, so, you know. There's a few things I know about being Canadian. One is that you have to be sorry about everything.
Yes. You
have to replace your blood with maple syrup. And the only meats available are beaver and moose. That's all very true. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, you guys do make like 80% of the world's maple syrup, although it's pretty much all in Quebec. So. Yep.
Did you see? It's airing. What, next week or the week after? There's a new HBO series
about Quebecois maple farmers.
The Quebecois syrup cartel.
Oh, neat.
Oh, interesting.
Syrup cartel. Those are words I didn't expect to hear in that combination today.
No, you didn't, but it's a thing. It's a real thing. I don't doubt Look it up, people.
Quebec has a literal strategic maple syrup reserve.
They really do.
It sounds like a post-apocalyptic thing. It's actually just a price control thing, but it exists.
Well, I'm shocked.
Yeah.
You can't just to give you a sense of this. If say you live in Quebec, say you've lived in Quebec your entire life, say you've got some maple trees on your property and you just want to tap them and make some maple syrup, and say you want to sell that maple syrup, nope, can't do it.
What if I want to gift it? What if I gift it?
I think that might be okay. I don't know.
All right, so here's the strategy, guys. I move to Quebec, I get a bunch of maple trees, and then I start selling secondhand Bic pens with free gift of maple syrup, but they're very expensive secondhand Bic pens.
Yes. Yes.
Also, you don't have to take the Bic pen if you don't want it.
Artisanally sharpened pencils.
There you go.
Because that's a thing that David Reese did for a long time. He had artisanal pencil sharpening.
Sharpened pencils.
Actually, Massachusetts.
This is an actual thing.
Massachusetts banned foie gras a while back, and for a while, restaurants could give away foie gras. So what you would get would be you could buy a very expensive salad, and it would come with a side of foie gras for free, which you could choose to accept or not.
Malicious compliance is my favorite.
Yeah. So, all right, but we're not here to talk about what it means to be Canadian or what various silly ways people have found to get around bans on selling certain food items. We are
talking about a Canadian.
Yes, Hugh Ross is a Canadian, which is actually something I learned the first episode of this. I didn't actually know that. I guess if you asked me, I'd say I guess maybe he's American, but I wouldn't have been confident about that. I do know that pretty much every time I see him, he's in a context where he's in the United States, because he's constantly giving talks to Christian groups in the U.S. So I'm used to seeing him.
Well, nobody up here will listen to him. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, also. I feel like is his what is he? He's Reasons to Believe. Are they headquartered in Canada or the U.S.?
They're probably headquartered in the U.S.
So that
my suspicion is they get better tax.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Tax exemptions in the U.S. than they would here in Canada. But,
U.S. loves to give all sorts of tax break to Christian nonprofits, and it is one of those. All right, so. We got a few things to read here. Cognitive Trifurcations for $5 says, at work with a new security alarm code, boss doesn't know it, security doesn't know it, I don't know it. Please help me down the screaming box. Oh no. Oh, that's rough. Yeah. Whenever you change the code and then don't tell everyone, that's not great. The Self Geek Beyond, who's been a member for 19 months and is at the annual level, says, glad I could make it to a stream again. Cheers to 19 months of membership and many more. Love, and remember, a like a day keeps the Bilbo away. This is true. If you like the stream, we are much less likely to have a Bilbo. Ben Thick Tunic gifted 5 Dapper Dinosaur memberships. Thank you very much. We will take 5 drinks for that after I finish reading a few more things. Moro, who has been a member for 1 month and is at the annual level, says, so rare for me to show up at the start of these. Almost as rare as an honest creationist diploma holder like the bags at AIG. We'll take a drink for that. 2. So we got 6 drinks. Here we go. I'm drinking some, what is this? This is whiskey and caffeine-free Diet Coke, because I already have too much caffeine as it is. 1, 2, 3.
I have to confess that I haven't liked the stream, and I'm in a position where I can't at the moment because I have closed the actual stream window.
How dare you, sir?
I'm sorry. So I'm not even
before I popped out the chat.
Wow, that's because you're on it. You're on the ball.
Kip is fired.
Professional.
Kip is fired. They can't see you anymore, Kip. No, you're back.
Oh God,
you're back.
Oh, phew.
That
was
Starsong has also gifted 5
alarming.
Dapper Dinosaur memberships, so I'll take 5 more drinks for that. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. All right, and I don't have the donations counter up right now. I need to look at my computer and see if it is having some struggles, because it's been struggling the past couple days. In fact, it seems like there's been a lot of struggling going on around the world. So it's been a really crazy week. I don't know if you guys know, but there was a 5-hour coup in South Korea. That was the thing that happened.
Crazy, eh?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. Guy goes on late at night, president. It's like martial law. 5 hours later, the legislature breaks through the barricades. And they vote no.
There's not.
Yeah.
Unanimous vote.
Yeah, he's now had his own party leadership call for him to resign. So there's that. We're also
all the turntables.
Also, a man named Brian Thompson has been in the news lately, and so we're actually going to take a moment of silence for all of his victims, starting now. All right. That was for
May their memories be for a blessing.
Mm-hmm. And may his name be forgotten. All right, so we're dealing with a few current events, but now I think it is time to get into the Hugh Ross and Tyson.
The very non-current events, which is Hugh Ross.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, we're all people who are like nerdy about the Bible, so we're all into things that aren't exactly current events.
That's fair, but I feel like Hugh Ross is a fossil on another level.
So he really is. So Hugh Ross is basically the only prominent old Earth creationist that in like Christian circles that I'm aware of.
That you've ever encountered.
Yeah, basically. Sometimes you run into some old Earth creationists in Catholic circles, but they're not usually like hosting like shows and going on podcasts to talk about it and whatnot. They're just like, yeah, I don't know about that whole evolution thing, but yeah, the Earth is probably a few billion years old, and it's just like, okay, sure, whatever. Have fun with that. You
mean they don't talk about dark matter in the Book of Job?
No, not really. Not that I've seen. I mean, then again, it's not like I pulled every single old Earth creationist Catholic out there. If you're an old Earth creationist Catholic, let me know. It might be an interesting talk. We can chat about dark matter in Job. But yeah, creationism in Protestant circles has basically just been whittled down to almost entirely young Earth creationism on the one side, and then the other side being basically like theistic evolution, where it's just like, yeah, I'm not really going to reject any parts of like geology or biology or anything. Maybe God directed some parts of evolution, or maybe he just set up the universe such that humans would arise as a result of how he set up the universe. And then, he had covenants with certain people groups and whatnot. And hey, if that's your position, I don't really have a bone to pick with you on that one. Like, sure, that's great for me. So yeah, that's basically what's whittled down to. And so basically, Reasons to Believe is the only really prominent old Earth creationist group. The two biggest names that I know from them are Hugh Ross and Fuzz Al-Rana. I've talked to Fuzz. We talked a few weeks ago, actually, on Jackson Wheat's channel.
Right. Yeah.
We actually had a really good conversation, and I think we came to an understanding of each other's positions that had not previously been fully there. I also did call him out for perhaps stating a position that he wasn't going to defend, and that perhaps in the future he should be more nuanced. And I think he took that on board as a criticism. I don't know if he'll change, but, it was at least a good discussion. So, like, I don't have the same amount of animosity towards Hugh Ross that I do towards, like, Ken Ham or Casey Luskin or one of these guys.
Because, I mean, look, at least, at the very bare minimum, Hugh Ross understands that the evidence that the cosmos is real effing old is overwhelming and just incontrovertible.
Yep. Star Song for $2 says, Brian Thompson has 0 cares from me. Yeah, I don't think there's going to be much disagreement there. I don't think anyone... Well, I can't say anyone. I mean, he had 2 sons. I'm sure they're shedding tears. But it's probably just about them. Yeah, but they were separated.
His wife, who issued a statement that was like, I just don't know why anyone would do this. And then like a second later, he was like, I guess it was all the denied claims. And I'm like, maybe.
Wow.
Let me, excuse me while I apply this Whipfenstock lip balm.
Yeah. I feel bad for his kids, less for her. She knew who he was.
Do your lips play flute for the highest?
For the highest?
Those lips require some special care.
Anyone whose lips play flute for the highest should be properly taken care of.
Yes.
So for the people in the chat who don't know and weren't able to tune into our SBL conference debrief stream earlier this week, first of all, go do that later, not during the stream. But
not during the stream.
There was a book published in English for the first time, and it is discussing various psalms. I believe
it's just a translation of psalms from Qumran, like non-biblical psalms from Qumran.
Ones that aren't in the 150?
151.
No.
Oh,
this is. I actually believe it's mostly Hodayot. And then probably non-canon. There's actually a couple of really interesting manuscripts of like non-canonical psalms that aren't Hodayot either. So yeah, it's kind of cool.
It's really cool.
Yeah. So what's Torleif's surname?
Torleif Elgvin was my boss in Norway when I was there for 3 years.
Yeah.
And he wrote this.
Yeah, he published this book, and the English title is a translation from a translation, quoting
of
one
a translation
psalms, and the psalm literally just is now rendered, "My lips play flute for the highest." So that is definitely a title.
Vishanti Torleif was not at the conference, and this is the only reason we know that this book was published, because he sent a text to our good friend Dr. Matt Monger, asking him if he could check the Whipfenstock booth at SBL to see if his book was there, the title of which is My Lips Play Flute for the Highest. As you can imagine, this
notable for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah. Oops. Yeah. So I have to say too, like Vishanti did not get the opportunity to meet Torleif at SBL because he stayed home. But listen, when you meet Professor Elgvin, this title takes on a whole new dimension.
Well,
I'm just saying that.
We got a super chat here for 100 Argentinian pesos from Captain Leonardo H. Tua, who says, can someone tell Dapper words like Shemayim are dual? Yeah, I know that they're dual. Okay. Are dual or tandem, so I can prove I was right like 10 videos ago, and I'm not. And if I'm wrong, please pretend I'm right so I look good. Yeah, no, you're right.
I thumbed up that one.
It does have the form of a dual.
I am cackling because that is one of the usernames of all time.
It is. So it actually goes back to my Star Trek actual play series on Top Hats Off. we have a lieutenant who is a turtle type person whose name is in fact Leonardo H. Tua. He's a security lieutenant who was once run over by a shuttle piloted by our chief engineer, who decided that he would ram the shuttle into a security robot. But our security turtle was in the way, and so I said, well, if you get a complication on this roll, instead of hitting the robot, you're going to hit the turtle guy. And so, yeah, he ran over our poor turtle security chief. Yeah.
Wow.
Oops.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, that's, you know what? That's Craig playing a half Tellarite engineer for you.
Hey, yesterday,
Tellarite. Oof.
Yeah.
I inserted a clip from Star Trek Original Series Season 2, Episode 6, into my child sacrifice video that I am finished.
Nice.
And will be rendering and publishing on my Patreon.
Well, speaking of the Bible,
yes.
So
let's speak about it.
Hugh Ross is here to contradict a claim from Neil deGrasse Tyson, which we heard in the first episode of this. Now, Neil deGrasse Tyson's claim is not very extraordinary, and it's not very long. It is basically just that if all you had to build your view of the world on was the text of the Bible, and I think we can safely assume that he means the 66-book Protestant canon, because that's the context that we're kind of working in here, you would not be able to create or derive anything close to a modern scientific understanding of things like physics, cosmology, the history of the Earth, biology, and that kind of thing. Instead, what people who want to see those things in the Bible do is they take their prior knowledge from science and read it into the Bible. Hugh Ross disagrees, and he is demonstrating this so far by taking his knowledge of science that he got from not the Bible and reading it into the Bible, which is just confirming what Tyson had said in the first place.
I don't recommend it.
Yeah, it's... And, like, look, before we get into... Just head off the thing at the past. Yeah, I know. Tyson has some odd proclivities, and he's, like, the king of nobody is allowed to have fun near him. And, you know, he's the kind of guy who jumps out during a production of Romeo and Juliet when someone says Juliet is the East to say, no, she's not!
Yeah, no, she's not!
He is that guy, but he is also, I think, unarguably right in his current take about how could you get modern understandings of science from the Bible? And the answer is just no. You couldn't. You just... And, I mean, to be fair to the Bible, I don't think anyone who was writing the Bible was writing it to teach people physics. I don't think that was the goal of any of the authors. So they did have an understanding of physics to some degree, right? Like they could build tall buildings and that didn't collapse, and they had understandings about like how to irrigate crops and things like this. So if they had wanted to write a book that had some scientific value in that sense, I'm sure you could get some aspects of, science out of a book like that written by the people who wrote the Bible, but they didn't write that kind of book because why would they? Yeah, Carnage Traffic says Neil deGrasse Tyson is usually right, just unwelcome. But that's the thing; he's often right about things that everyone already knows he's right about, but no one really cares. Like you guys, the year is just arbitrary. There's nothing really to celebrate. Everyone's like, yeah, we know.
Like, really?
We picked a day and we're going to celebrate it. Do you have to try to make us not have a celebration? Like, is your life so great, Neil deGrasse?
Enjoy things,
right? Is Neil deGrasse Tyson's life so happy and full of joy that he never feels a need to celebrate anything ever?
The craziest thing, he seems like he could be a fun guy.
Yeah, until you hear him talk.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Anyway, we're primarily here to dunk on Ross, and not even necessarily to dunk on Ross, but just to point out the degree to which he is just confirming what Tyson said. So here we go. Here's Ross and his co-host, whose name I don't remember because I don't care about him.
I especially appreciate the Bible is it gives us strong clues when it's using figures of speech or poetic language or where it intends to be interpreted.
Okay, maybe with poetic language, because poetry and prose is generally pretty distinct. But I disagree that it's always clear when it's using figurative versus non-figurative language.
Absolutely, and this is one of the things that I get after repeatedly is our ways of drawing these sharper distinctions between poetic or metaphorical and prosaic and literal are not necessarily even close to the ways in which ancient people did, and certainly the writers of the Hebrew Bible. I tend to think that very often when we designate a text poetic and assign to it metaphorical categories of the imagery that's being conveyed throughout a lot of these poems and songs, that we're probably doing so inappropriately a lot of the time.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite examples of a verse that people, or a section of the Bible that people now take as being figurative, that I don't think was written to be figurative, is when God puts his hand over Moses and then takes it away so that Moses can see his back. A lot of people will say, well, God doesn't actually have a physical body, so this must be some kind of metaphor. It's like, the idea that God doesn't have a physical body is a idea from later philosophical musings from like the Greco-Roman period that you are importing into a much older text that did not have that assumption. The writer of this section of Exodus is imagining God placing a physical hand over Moses to protect him from the glory of God's shining body, and then releasing it once his face is, God's face is no longer in view so that Moses can glance at God's back. Literally.
This is my repeated plea for people in the audience. If you're able to read Dr. Francesca Stavrakopoulou's book, God and Anatomy.
Yeah, so that is, and that's actually not even just the science part, right? I don't think Ross has an ability, and to be fair, I don't think most people do, but I don't think he has the ability to assess things like, when did the idea of God's incorporeality get integrated into things like, Jewish thought that then led to later Christian ideas about God? And how does that contrast with the likely time of the writing of this section of Exodus? I don't think he has I don't even know that he has the awareness that that's something that he might want to do, and I certainly don't think that he has the ability to figure out where to look for that kind of thing, to figure out what the answer is there. So,
literally and historically. So like when you look at the first 11 chapters of Genesis, the text goes overboard in giving you clues repeatedly that this is meant to be interpreted as a chronology of real historical events.
No.
So here's the thing. Even if that's... if we take... The thing that bugs me here is like, okay, Ross, if we were to take Ross seriously about that, you would come away with young Earth creationism.
Yes.
That's why the young Earth creationists do it. He doesn't do that. So why is he advocating for that? I don't know. Star Song for $5 says, my former religion, Seventh-day Adventist, viewed God as being physical. Yeah, the Seventh-day Adventists have a lot of deviations from what I would consider to be like mainstream Protestant beliefs. It's a weird group. Or even just like other broad like historical philosophical positions in like lots of Christianity. Like most Christian groups teach that like the entire universe is fallen to some degree, although they disagree about exactly what that means and how it was caused. But like the Seventh-day Adventists are like, no, it's just Earth. There are other planets inhabited by other people who aren't fallen, and they're just cheering on the Christians on Earth to maybe hopefully save Earth. And then when Earth is saved, we'll join the galactic community of unfallen creation. And it's like, oh, okay. Hey, I mean, sure, why not? I mean...
When you look at the book of Job, for example,
we're back to Job.
We're describing the Leviathan and the Behemoth, is that you'll see it uses the word...
Okay, that's a new pronunciation.
Behemoth? Or
Behemoth.
Behemoth.
I mean...
It's it's oddly actually a little closer to the Hebrew behemoth, right? It's it's closer in those terms than behemoth. But yeah, behemoth.
And it's definitely closer than Kent Hovind's behemoth.
Yeah. I'm going to go with the same rules that I use for like pronouncing like the names of scientific names of like organisms, right? Which is, I'm going to say, pronounce every consonant and vowel with a reasonable like take on them, and then I'm just going to be like, yeah, okay. Like, did you skip a vowel? Then you're wrong. Did you skip a consonant? Then you're wrong. Did you get all of them? And all of them had a quality that was roughly reasonable? Then I'm just going to be like, okay, fine, you're good. I'm not going to nitpick someone saying behemoth or behemoth, or also not going to nitpick between like Deinonychus, which is how I say it, or Deinonychus, which is technically wrong, but I don't care. It's fine.
Of course, unlike English, and certainly unlike English, as Vishanti can attest to in her near completion of her Hebrew course. Pronunciation in Hebrew actually does it's pretty. The rules are pretty strict.
Yeah,
And for good reason.
English barely has phonotactic rules. I don't know if you've noticed.
Yeah.
English is like phonotactics.
And even when it does, it's like, hey, here's a rule, but just kidding. It's not actually a rule.
Yeah, there's very...
Because in this situation and other random situations that you can't possibly foreknow, it's actually something completely different. Because English is a nonsensical language.
It is.
It's a Frankenstein's monster of other languages and rules and spelling, and it's just preposterous.
I think it's more of a Godric the Grafted rather than a Frankenstein's monster. But Bashanti hasn't played Elden Ring, so she doesn't get that reference.
I have never played Elden
21
Ring either.
times.
Y'all should play some Elden Ring. He's like the second boss.
No, I'm alright.
It's a good game.
Those are clues that you're getting metaphors and figures of speech. And so as you read...
You literally just told us that it wasn't that, my guy. What do you...
But also, how would he know? He can't read Hebrew.
I'm going to take a drink for it.
Right?
It's a literal chronology, but we're being clued in that it's using figures of speech. Those are contradictory claims.
I'll point this out again. Like, the reason, we assign genres to texts is because we intuit them in English literature.
Mm-hmm.
When you get to Hebrew literature, we can recognize, like, poems, right? We can see the structure of Hebrew poetry, but again, just making the assumption that metaphor and imagery has any kind of special or different import there as it does in prosaic texts is just an assumption.
Yeah, there's one of the only times I'm comfortable saying with any confidence that something is a metaphor is when the text says it is, right? So if the text says, hey, you being a cow who ate up all the land is indicating that there's going to be a famine, then yeah, the cow that eats up the whole land, that's obviously a metaphor because it's called out as such in the text. Or if in Revelation it says, and the 7 lampstands represented the 7 churches, well then I guess the lampstands were a metaphor for those churches because it says so in the text. Which, yeah. Also, Sir Mix-a-Lot says, God Has Back is a new member at the Amnio level. Welcome, Sir Mix-a-Lot says, God Has Back. What a great username.
The chapters 40 and 41 of the book of Job, you look at the poetical clues in the text and realize this is describing the emotions of a human that has a close encounter with these creatures.
The text is literally God talking and describing these creatures. If you want to make that claim, what specific clues are you saying that are being called out here, right? Because it's easy to say, well, there are specific clues, and then just not give them. I want to know specifically what about the text of Job indicates that the descriptions of the giant chaos monsters that are obviously not real animals as they're described, no animal has ever been big enough to swallow the Jordan. What is the clue that indicates to you that this is actually supposed to be an emotional reaction from a human rather than what the text actually has, which is God coming and telling Job about these things?
What does Hugh Ross think that the Leviathan and the Behemoth are?
Not a clue. Maybe we'll find out.
Okay.
And this is describing literal characteristics of the creatures that are being described. And so it's easy to...
It's describing literal characteristics of the creatures being described.
Yes.
Is that not just a tautology?
I mean, yeah, but also...
Am I not caffeinated enough?
The thing is, Ross doesn't actually believe that, though. Because he doesn't believe in fire-breathing dragons or animals that are big enough that they can swallow the entire Jordan River. And not just the Jordan River that now exists, but the higher volume Jordan River from like 2,000 years ago.
Before all the dams, were built.
Because remember, the Jordan River 2,000 years ago had a much higher volumetric flow rate than the one now. So you would need to be a much bigger animal then. And no, I'm not going to assume that, Job was written like 4,000 years ago. But even if we date it 2,000 years ago, which is too late, in my opinion, obviously I think it was written at least a few hundred years before, the year 1 or so. The Jordan River was much higher flow than it is now. Much, much higher. Like several times as much. And so I don't think that Ross believes in an animal that big, because there isn't one. I mean, that's the thing. Connor Verification says, I don't know, he clearly just said he does believe those things. But that's the thing, I think he's contradicting himself. I think he's in a situation, and look, I'm not a psychologist or anything, I'm not trying to give him a professional diagnosis or anything, but What it seems to me like is that Hugh Ross is in a situation where he feels like he has to dogmatically defend certain aspects of the Bible, like its inerrancy. And he also knows too much to believe that a lot of the stuff in the Bible is literally true. But he also doesn't want to say that it's all just metaphor and fiction and we can, we don't have to worry too much about it. So he's in this uncomfortable position. I think what he's doing is he's compartmentalizing, right? He's got his knowledge about the world and he's putting it somewhat aside so that he can make motions towards his belief in inerrancy. Mm-hmm. And then he can just kind of twist it enough, and then later on, when he goes to do something else, like talk about, biology or cosmology or something, he's going to bring the actual knowledge he has about the world out to the front and shove that part of the Bible into the back of his mind so he just doesn't have to think about it. Maybe I think my hypothesis.
Vulpix, half fox, half Pokemon is probably on point here by noting that the Jordan River is smaller now because it was drunk by said biblical monster.
Oh,
did you think about that? Did you?
I honestly did not. That does seem like a strong possibility. So Behemoth is the reason that the Jordan River has a lower flow rate now. Okay. What do the dams do though? They exist. Okay. You know what? They're collecting the water for the next time Behemoth comes by, so it'll have just an easy place to drink out of.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. It's just like it's a big doggy water bowl for Behemoth.
Piece together in the book of Job what's meant to be taken literally and what's meant to be taken figuratively, because the text is giving you two descriptions. But
Hugh, the thing is, we know that the only criteria that you're going to use is you're going to say the parts that are literal are the parts that you don't have a problem with based on your scientific knowledge.
Yep.
And the parts you're going to say are figurative are going to be the parts that contradict what you know about the world on the basis of science, which is exactly what Neil deGrasse Tyson was saying you were doing.
Yes.
You're just demonstrating how right Tyson is.
I am credulous about this part of the text. Therefore.
Yeah, therefore it's literal.
Uh-huh.
But you don't have the ability to crawl inside the mind of the author to determine if that's the case. And even if you want to say the author was God, you still don't have the ability to crawl into that guy's mind either. So it's very frustrating how very blatantly obvious what he's doing is. And the thing is, I don't even mind that much what he's doing. Because, okay, if you want to reinterpret the parts of the Bible that contradict science so that you can continue believing in whatever faith tradition you're from, while also not contradicting physical reality, I don't really care that you're doing that. That's fine by me. Go have fun with it. Whatever. I don't really have a bone to pick with that, because so many people are doing that, and it doesn't really affect me, and I had to pick my battles on that. I don't think it's a great way to read the text if you're concerned with, the actual original meaning of the text and what it meant to the authors and the people to whom it was written or for whom it was written. But that's a separate issue. But what really bugs me here is when he pretends that that's not what he's doing, and he does that knowing that he has a pretty big platform to spread that kind of just nonsensical idea that he's not doing this, in contrast to Tyson, who says he has to, when he very clearly is. That's what really bugs me, is the dishonesty about that. Just be honest with it, Hugh.
Yeah. These animals are like, and what the human contactee with the animal feels emotionally. And
remember, in Job, no one in the narrative actually who's a human comes in contact with either Leviathan or Behemoth. That's an entirely made-up aspect of Job that Hugh Ross is just shoving into it.
And of course they don't, because they can't.
Right, they would die. That's the whole point.
Yes, that's the point. Is
Yeah.
these creatures are absolutely beyond any kind of human natural control manipulation. It just
Leviathan has scales like metal that will turn away speed.
Time. Saloof is screaming at you in the chat because you're twice as loud as the other ones of us.
Oh, am I?
Oh.
Turn me down. I do not know why the sound is so inconsistent on OBS. And it looks like you guys are coming into about the same range as me.
Weird.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll turn you guys up a little bit, and I turn myself down a little bit. So we'll hit play on this. We'll get a little more.
You can distinguish those two things. And it's basically saying, for example, hey, with you're within 10 feet or less of a Leviathan, just you and the Leviathan, and you got a stick in your hand, it may as well have armor on its skin for all the good that stick is going to do to defend yourself. Same thing with this breathing fire and smoke on it. It's basically telling you how the human contactee feels with that contact, with that animal.
No.
But
No.
No.
Literally none of that.
It's
The only reason they're
Yeah.
being described is to belittle Job
Mhm.
and make God look bigger. That's it.
Yep.
It's like God's showing up and going, hey, can you flex on this animal like I did? Can you flex on this critter like I did? No, you can't? All right. All right then. Now what?
Yeah.
And
which, by the way,
there is no human emotion being described in those 2 or 3 chapters. Like,
which by the
I
way,
don't know where he's getting this.
that argument from God is just God doing good, might makes right.
Yep.
That is that is what that section of Job is about. Is God comes down and he says, "Hey, I'm stronger than you. I'm tougher than you. So I don't have. I can do what I want, and I don't really have to care about your complaints." That's it.
Yeah, and this is why,
right.
as someone in the chat mentioned earlier, like, sarcasm doesn't come through in text unless you clearly delineate it, and it's a much easier reading at the end of the book if you just take Job responding sarcastically.
Yes. Yes.
I'm just saying.
The proper way to read this text is God showing up and bloviating and like pissing all over everything and yelling like a tyrant, and Job basically, throwing his hands up and going, yeah, what am I gonna do? I guess you win.
By the way, I have to point out, Jillian, some guy on a boat at Alren's Kitty, has left us what looks like 6 backslashes. So thank you very much, Jillian. Some guy on a boat at Alren's Kitty. I appreciate that.
Oh,
what
does that
yeah,
mean?
and
it's literally her kitten was on a keyboard. It sent us several different backslashes.
Message.
Yes.
That's Kitty trying to participate. So yeah, Job.
Double rainbow.
What does it mean?
Across the sky. So, yeah, Job claps back. Oh, big man, oh, you're so great and strong, powerful, and then gets rewarded for being sassy at the end. So, in my very, very biased opinion, my not objective opinion, God likes a partner who can get sassy back, which is why Israel's named Israel, because we will fight you back.
Sir Mix-a-Lot says God has back for 100 Argentinian pesos. Says, Job, why did you kill my family? God, what you gonna do about it, little man?
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
It's interspersed with sentences that are clearly meant to be taken literally. And so we can...
How do you know?
Yeah.
Like, seriously. Like, that's just it, right? Like, how
he knows.
Are you performing the careful philological analysis of these texts, Hugh Ross, know?
As far as I know, Hugh Ross does not know any Hebrew or Greek. I could be wrong about that. And if anyone has evidence that he does know some Hebrew or Greek, please let me know, because this is just what I am aware of from having seen a fair bit of Hugh Ross stuff in the past.
I want to raise that bar slightly and say that it's Hebrew that he didn't just parrot from someone else who knows Hebrew.
Well, there's that too.
Because a lot of theologians and pastors and apologists will do that. They'll repeat information they heard from someone who does know, and it makes it sound like they know, but they don't.
Yeah.
So, but this is the gripe that I have with a lot of these guys is fine. I understand that learning the language can be difficult, and I understand that it's extremely time consuming. I mean, God knows I put in the time and the effort. But here's the thing. Hugh Ross has been doing this for 30 years.
Something like that.
Yeah. Some of these apologists that I encounter on YouTube have been doing this for years. just get off your ass and learn the languages. Like, just do it. If you're going to engage in these sort of serious critiques of the text, then stop being lazy.
Yeah.
Right.
And like, it's not like it's rocket science. It's not exactly the easiest thing to do, but like, you can do it.
But make an effort, right? Like, that's just it. Like, make an effort.
Right. Like,
especially now,
unless you have
quite literally, there are multiple channels on YouTube for free that will teach you what the letters are, what basic sounds they make, what the indications are for vowel pronunciation, and they will start taking you through basic grammar for free.
Yeah.
And even those that, like Josh's, I don't know what Dan's charging, but Dr. Josh's and it's the I'll be teaching the next round. But the course that we're offering in Hebrew, literally, like, it's a couple $100.
Yeah.
Like, it's accessible.
A fraction of what you would have to pay at a university level.
I'm very confident that basically any person with an internet connection could get through for free, just online, at least like 2 semesters worth of Hebrew. And then from there, they might have to start paying for a little bit more advanced classes. But they could probably get through like at least 4 semesters worth of Hebrew training,
maybe
for under $1,000.
But
I mean, I'm serious. You could even get through some of the more complex aspects with like 2 other websites. Like, there's the Binyanim, which will give you all of the different conjugations, again, for free, that you can use to check. And then there's like a little grammar thing that has a left sidebar, again, for free. It'll tell you, hey, this is what a tense is. This is how it's used. This is a different form of a verb. This is how it's used. So you could legitimately get through that.
As if ancient Hebrew had tenses instead of aspects anyway.
Get out of here.
I'm not a linguist.
Yeah.
These together. But the bottom line as a lawyer is you need to carefully read the text to see which...
Wait, is he a lawyer?
No, the guy on the left is.
Abdu Murray is.
There's his name.
Oh, that's right. They're arguing this as if they're in a court.
Right.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
That's definitely how you're supposed to analyze ancient texts. Okay.
Yeah.
Parts are to be intended to be taken literally, and which ones are figures of speech that is communicating at different point.
Okay, I have a quick question. We're gonna poll the audience, right? So here's going to be the question. So we're gonna start a poll, and it's of the people here.
Oh, Mazel Tov to JS, who just passed their Latin exam at their theological studies. The University of Helsinki.
Nice.
That's awesome.
University of Helsinki.
Hey,
man, that's like I've spent lots of time at the University of Helsinki. That's pretty sweet.
All right, so the question is going to be, of the people here, who could be an expert witness on Job? This is going to be Ross. There's going to be Davis, or Kip, and we're going to have Vishanti and Dapper as options. And I'm going to see, who, of all 4 of us, who do we think could reasonably be an expert witness on a trial about the Hebrew text and meaning of Job?
I'm recusing.
And if you vote, if anybody votes for me, you shouldn't do that. Don't vote for me.
Kip's the only one who should actually be getting.
That's not the correct answer.
Even if he's recusing.
I'm recusing.
Well, you're at 75% right now, so yeah, just got to deal with it.
Why are people voting for me? Do not vote for me. I'm not qualified to be an expert witness on this. Listen to what I'm telling you.
To be fair, Kip is also saying that.
Yeah, but he's got PhD level degrees in relevant fields. I don't.
I just said I'm recusing myself.
You're not allowed to do that.
Oh. I have to vote?
I have spoken.
You don't have to vote. You can abstain, but that's different from like recusing. That's pulling yourself out of contention.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Saloof, Kip is on the poll. His last name is Davis. We used his surname.
Yeah, that's because I did it for Ross too, so I wanted to keep it consistent. Ross Davis.
I have a surname.
Yeah.
You know what's funny?
His name isn't just Kip. He's not Madonna.
Well, yeah, his name's not just Kip. What's funny is this is a little bit of trivia about me. You can learn some of my lore. Is my dad was actually adopted and his biological parents' surname actually is Davis.
Wow.
Are you
Yep.
and Kip related?
I doubt it.
At some,
Highly doubt it.
Well, yeah, I suppose if you go back far enough.
Ways you go far enough back, and all of us are. All of us, Davises
really.
are.
You go back
Yeah,
like some
but,
10,000 years or so. Turns out
It would have to be thousands of years, because literally my ancestors on my paternal side, they were all early settlers in the South Carolina and Alabama Gulf Coast region, and I highly doubt Kip has relatives that did that. So
now, see, the Sea Lift is calling me out because my surname isn't Dapper; it's Dinosaur. But
Dinosaur.
Actually, Ceratosaurus
It's not, though.
used the naming convention of places like Korea or Japan, where the family name comes first and the given name comes after. So my surname is in fact Dapper, and my personal name is Dinosaur. So, checkmate. I'm gonna hit play, and we're gonna hear some more Ross.
Okay.
Almost every Bible text, it's trying to communicate multiple messages, not a single message.
Okay, that part I can see as being plausible, right? Like, most texts don't have just one only goal that they only ever set out to accomplish. Lots of texts have multiple goals with one primary goal, and then some, like, little subsidiary goals. Like, okay, maybe I could buy that. I'm not convinced in the case of Job, but, like, it's plausible, at least, that the author had more than one intent in writing Job. Like, sure.
So I actually, I mean, here's the thing about that, right? Like, I think that most of the time, and I'm talking about any text that we subject to our interpretive lenses, I think most of the time the layers of meaning that we are setting upon a text tend to be our own, and that doesn't make them invalid or somehow worth less. Like, I think these are, and this is just the spectacularly beautiful thing about literature, right? All literature is that it's deliciously malleable, and there are aspects and nuances within literature by which we can do some astonishingly creative things. So I think of just some of this, a couple of the recent examples that just popped up on the top of my head are like television, film examples. The first one is Karate Kid. All y'all, you've watched Karate Kid, like the original movie.
Mm-hmm.
Someone wrote up a brilliant new take on the meaning of Karate Kid. And it works because this is the way literature and art work. Yeah. But it's absolutely like a 90-degree turn, 180-degree turn on what the original messages of Karate Kid are. The same goes for something like, I've seen the same thing done, literary analyses of Rudolph. Christmas season's coming up. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, the film, has some really, really brilliant, literary analyses, and they're totally beside the point of what I am sure the original filmmakers, authors of this text intended, but they work probably better. That's the beautiful thing.
Take that, original authors.
So take that.
Take that, yeah.
Also,
now,
there's only rare cases usually where I will vehemently not argue for death of the author, and that's when they write a text specifically to critique a certain idea or like a mindset, like the Dune novels. It's literally Frank Herbert going, hey, cultic messiahs and holy wars, based on radicalism are bad, actually. And then the sequel is, okay, I didn't say it clear enough the first time. So, yeah, in that case, I'm not going to argue for death of the author.
No, Paul's the good guy.
Good.
Sir Mix-a-Lot says God has back for 100 Argentinian pesos. Says, Dapper, My name is Hugh Man. Yes, my name is Hugh Man from Humansville, Missouri, and I have a normal human job.
Yes.
I still say we need to investigate Humansville, Missouri, and see if like it's actually full of like weird alien invaders. Because like, come on,
Coneheads.
Yeah, there's actually
France. We come from France.
It's actually a linguistic phenomenon where like bringing up things that are just normally true flags the likelihood of that truth or falsity as being unusual and therefore worth investigation. And it comes up with things when you say like, "Hey, these strawberries are cyanide free." Like, why are you saying that?
Why did you feel the need to mention that?
Right.
Yeah.
They're normally strawberry or cyanide free, but like, why in this case?
Yeah. In the chat, Akoyote says, seems to me that Hebrew is especially good for using words whose meanings sort of zap off into an infinity of connections and nuances. That's mysticism, baby.
I mean, and the thing is, though, it's not just Hebrew. You can find that with basically any holy text in any language, right? Like the number of times I've seen.
I almost dropped the F-bomb. I was gonna say people do it with QAnon in English of all languages.
Right. Yes.
Here's a fun one. Look into mystical interpretations of the number 19 in Islamic thought. Because there's this really weird verse in the Quran that says, and above it are 19, and it doesn't say what it is. It doesn't say what the 19 are. It's just a verse that's just kind of hanging there, and no one really knows why. Cool. And so the number 19 has all sorts of mystical things that have been spun off from that for centuries. And
interesting. Okay.
It's just a number. And yet, hey,
it was probably just a scribal note that accidentally got put in, but
no, the Quran is actually a direct dictation from God. Every single word is exactly as God wanted it to be, in the place where it is, with the spelling he wanted. Just don't pay any mind to the fact that we do in fact have variant Qurans that are still being published. Yeah, don't worry about that.
No.
There's only one, even though there's two mainstream ones. Don't worry. Oh, I missed the
Steam Wing is mentioning the number 23. That was a good movie. I liked it. Haters gonna hate.
We need the expertise of a fellow like you.
No,
why?
We don't.
What?
No, we
why
don't.
Why do you need a lawyer to talk about biblical text? What possible expertise could he bring?
I can't even. No, we don't. We don't need Abdu Maria's expertise for this. Nope, we're just gonna play.
And I appreciate that very much.
Oh God.
We're just gonna ignore it. Actually, we're gonna drink for it, and then we're just gonna continue on because of how stupid that was.
That is nonsense.
Wow.
And for the sake of my own sanity, I'm gonna assume that Ross isn't being totally sincere, and instead he's just trying to butter up his host so that the interview goes well.
Let's hope so.
That's for the sake of my sanity. That's what I'm going with. Do I actually think it's true?
And we are aware that there are a couple of points I want to bring up as we continue on and come close to wrapping up here. Is a couple of points that I think are important. Is one is there have been interpretations of the Bible in a way that don't try to foist a figurative language on it. In other words, because they're embarrassed by the scientific discoveries of the contemporary time. In other words, we've been doing this. Let me back up and say it this way.
Yeah, I have no idea what he's getting at, so I'm glad he's going to back up.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've been doing this for a while. Christians have been interpreting the Bible in...
Yeah, that's true. I mean... In fact, they've been doing it for longer than there's been a Bible.
Yes.
Let him cook.
That allows for a day age sort of perspective on the days of the first 6 days of creation.
That has been an interpretation.
And in other ways that haven't been sort of recent ad hoc sort of reinterpretations. As you pointed out, I think that we've been doing this for a while. So you look at Augustine, you look at other people who are interpreting the biblical text, and we go back centuries where we're like, no, this is the days could be longer than 24 hours.
Okay, but that's not what Ross is doing.
The fact that we're having those discussions at all is ad hoc.
But also, Ross isn't just going with day ages, right? Because that's just one like metaphorical framework that you slap on the days and then you're done. He's doing this whole thing where like the entirety of the Big Bang and the nebular hypothesis for the formation of the solar system is somehow like phenomenologically embedded in the text. That is not a simple single thing where you're like, the days were ages of indefinite period because it's a metaphor, and then you're just done with it. That's not what Ross is doing. Ross is doing a far more ad hoc thing than any of that. That's already ad hoc, right? Because you're looking at the Earth and you're like, oh, well, it can't be 6,000 or 10,000 or whatever years old. So, day age. done. Ross is specifically going through and finding aspects of science that he's going to read into Genesis 1 where they do not belong natively, but he's doing it anyway. It's far more ad hoc than anything Augustine of Hippo was doing.
Yes. Yes.
Not that I'm defending Augustine of Hippo's interpretations. I don't really care.
And I will, I'll go back to this. It's the day age interpretation. I think we talked a little bit about this the last time I was here. If you are going to take what the text of Genesis 1 says about itself seriously, it doesn't work, because the text of Genesis 1 itself is explicit about what a day is, how long a day is, and why.
It
why
has evening and morning.
Do these people? Because that's the thing, right? Like, on the face of it, Genesis chapter 1 is fairly clear about what it wants to communicate and why. Are these people just blind to that or ignoring that? It's not an accident that the story culminates on the Sabbath day.
Right.
The Sabbath day, y'all.
That's literally the point. It's establishing the work week. All
right, so I have finished the poll, by the way. Of the people here, who could be an expert witness on Job? Kip got 56% of the votes. Vishanti got 26%.
Not high enough.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not gonna lie, guys. It feels low.
Vishanti got 26% of the votes. I got 13. I'm glad that I got less than either of those, because I definitely know less Hebrew than either of you. I probably know more than Ross, but that's not saying much. And then Ross got 3%, which was also shockingly high to me. Hey,
my number's way too high.
Is that
like two people who voted Ross? 3%? Did you misclick? What happened? Yeah. There was actually one of my videos where I was like, this Hebrew is so basic, even I could understand it without looking it up. And like, that is actually a statement of just how basic a Hebrew phrase could possibly be, because I have to look up like everything. So
this is not a new thing.
Wait, no, we're gonna go take a quick break. We're gonna refill our drinks. We're gonna come back. We'll, any kind of biology stuff, and then we will be back with the second half of this. And so stay tuned. Don't turn away. Don't touch that dial. It doesn't exist because this is a computer and not a broadcast TV thing. But don't touch it anyway. And enjoy.
Local 58.
It doesn't exist on most TVs either.
Yeah, you can't just...
Yeah.
There's not a
dinosaur.
dial. Well,
I'm using your first name.
Look,
dinosaur.
That's my personal name. My first name is still the first name. It's just a surname.
Yeah.
It's confusing, right?
Sure.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to be right back in just a few minutes. In the meantime, please enjoy the musical stylings of one Bent Hovind, who, by the way, is still pretty far away from getting another free pizza. So if you want to help out with him getting a free pizza, feel free. Okay, we are back. Welcome back. So the first thing I wanted...
Oh, I wasn't yesterday. I won't be tomorrow. But perhaps someday.
The bad news is, Vishanti, I was doing the welcome back thing, which meant that I hadn't unmuted you guys yet. And you started singing while I was mute. While you were... I always unmute me first so I can say welcome back, everyone, in case anyone is trying to continue a conversation. And then you jumped in and interrupted me, the exact reason I mute y'all. I'm sorry.
You missed
That's
it, guys.
how I do it.
You missed it.
All right, so the
You
first...
did an incredible rendition of the Ada
Yes.
Perón Don't Cry for Me
Yes,
Argentina. And I'm not doing it again.
That's fair.
Oh.
But you gotta check to see if I've unmuted everybody yet.
How would I know that you've unmuted
I can't
me?
tell.
I would address you. That's how.
Okay. All right.
All right, so now that we're back, I have
Cool.
you're not wrong. I have a few things to say. First, I want to thank Urban Imposter. Urban Imposter, who I don't believe is in the chat right now, but maybe, got me a chair from my wish list. A nice, gaming desk chair thing, right? And I want to be especially grateful for this for a couple reasons, right? I don't talk about it, but I do have some occasional problems with pain that kind of flares up here and there. And when that happens, I spend a non-trivial amount of my time trying to just be in a position that is not causing me constant significant pain. And that has been the case for the last few days. And this chair has greatly reduced the amount of pain that I am in just by being better support and a better positioned chair. And so I want to say an especially big thank you for that, because it has been a significant increase to my quality of life in a way that gifts from Amazon rarely are. So special thank you to Urban Imposter for that. I did thank Urban Imposter over on the last episode of Star Trek Lexington, which is where he showed up and let me know that was him, because there was no who it's from tag on this, because it wasn't fulfilled through the normal Amazon warehouse, so that they didn't have that. So yeah, special thank you there. And just real quick, hey, this channel is almost entirely supported directly through you guys, whether it be through super chats, sending gifted memberships, joining the memberships, the Patreon, all that stuff. If you're interested and you can afford it, why don't you check out my Patreon, check out the channel memberships. You can get early access to videos. There's a Discord server that's just for supporters. Early access usually means months and months of early access. Like 5 months is like a pretty good minimum for how much time you'll have to watch a video early before I put it out publicly. I'm 30-something videos in the can waiting to premiere right now. And I just published one yesterday with it's about Casey Luskin, and also somewhat about the Discovery Institute and the Center for Science and Education, or not Science and Education, was it the Center for Cultural, whatever Casey Luskin runs. I don't remember it. It's some stupid branch of the Discovery Institute. So yeah, if any of that is, you can afford it and you're interested, please check that out, because it really does help. And also, super chats, super stickers, all that stuff really help. But let's get back to this, although I just realized I'm skipping over Joshua Geese, who gifted 5 Dapper Dinosaur memberships. So let's take 5 drinks for that, now that I have a fresh drink. One.
The chat was asking how much it would take to get me to sing that rendition again, so I will accept a $25 donation to my PayPal.
Oh, here we go.
Yep.
Okay. But yeah, if you jump in while I'm saying welcome back, you will almost 100% of the time be muted. So, that's just a heads up. I don't know what to tell you.
In other words, we didn't invent this 60 years ago to try to come up with...
Fabrication says, Center for Fabricating Moral Panics. Yeah, that's a pretty good actual description of what it is.
A way around what it seems like embarrassing text. Is that right? Have we been doing this for quite some time?
Yes, what I noticed about Neil deGrasse Tyson, he assumed that 6 literal days in Genesis had to be 6 24-hour periods.
Yeah, because that's what the text
indicates.
indicates.
It says the evening and the morning were day 1. How do you not assume that's a literal day?
Yeah,
The
text gives
in
every
the
indication.
goddamn text.
Yeah. Look,
Dr. Ross.
the thing is, I'm perfectly happy if someone wants to have a different interpretation of that. But remember what Tyson's point was. All you have to build your worldview from is the Bible. The only reason someone is going to interpret day age or some other complicated, convoluted idea that is trying to make Genesis 1 compatible with the ancient age of the earth is because of extra biblical ideas that they've already gained, which in the hypothetical isn't allowed. The hypothetical is all you have is a copy of the Bible, and you need to determine, and presumably you can understand it, right? Like you can read the words and you know what they mean. Whatever. Can you determine like a reasonable version of a worldview about how physics and astronomy and all this works? And the answer is clearly no.
Clearly.
He seems to be unaware that this is Hebrew, and the
No, I don't think Neil deGrasse Tyson is unaware that it's
I don't
Hebrew.
think he's unaware of that.
And how does this help you?
Well,
Ross?
he did say "and," so we're going to hear, I think, what that's supposed to mean for Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Hebrew word for day has 4 distinct literal definitions.
Yeah,
Dude.
Wait, whoa.
And it's defined in the text. Are you
In
reading
the
the text?
text?
The text is telling you which of these 4 definitions you should be using.
Mm-hmm.
It's there.
It's not the one where it's like, in the days of my fathers. That's a different kind of use.
Nope.
When it says the evening and the morning, there's
Literally.
not a lot of other options.
Okay, I want to know what Hugh Ross thinks. The 4 literal definitions are when the text reads Vayhi Erev, Vayhi Boker, Yom Echad. Please explain to me the 4 literal meanings of and the evening and the morning was day 1. Ready, set, go.
Yeah.
Your pronunciation is on point.
Well
Miss
done.
Robinson.
Thank you. Toda Rabba. Or should I go with Toda Rabba?
Ooh.
Trilling the R's. Let's go!
Tomer, I don't think Tomer really likes it when you trill the R's, though.
Tomer.
What about uvular R's? I believe that is the way that Hebrew goes for modern Hebrew is uvular R's.
Yeah.
Yeah, they kind of swallow their R's like the French, and I said that I hated it a lot. Which I do, because it's the same vague sound like the Scottish law is huh, and I don't like that. No. Leish.
The fun fact, y'all,
Shanta's going to start her own pronunciation.
Is we really have a very vague idea on how the ancients pronounce their reshes.
Yeah.
So
I mean, because it's treated as a guttural in
Indeed.
many cases.
Indeed. Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's one of the
I
problems
just don't have to like that.
That's one of the problems with ancient pronunciations is unless we have texts telling us how it's pronounced, it's hard to say. Which fortunately we do have.
As we
for
do
some
with
language.
classical Latin.
Yeah, Latin grammarians were big on putting down pronunciation guides and saying how to pronounce Latin words
How to
properly.
pronounce this.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Lieutenant Fitz of Rage has pointed out that you are not making your case that you shouldn't be the expert witness.
me or Vishanti?
Vishanti.
Okay.
I'm not an expert witness. I'm just the clerk for the expert witness.
There you go.
Which is a long period of time. Moreover, that definition is actually used in Genesis 2:4. In Genesis 2:4.
So hold on.
An entirely different composition.
A totally different text written by a completely different author at a different time period, answering different questions.
Yeah, we're just going to take a drink for just ignoring the very obvious fact that these are not the same texts.
Have to because I haven't honestly memorized the entire Bible. I just have to look up here what Genesis 2:4
I guess
says.
the whole Bible is a lot, but you should have at least memorized the whole Torah. Come on.
I created them. Yeah. On the day that Yahweh Elohim made the earth, the ground, and the sky.
That doesn't sound like a different use of it. That actually kind of sounds like
really.
On the day.
I mean, you could
that
say
Bayom?
It's Bayom. Yep. So it's Biyom Asot Adonai Elohim Eretz V'Shamayim. So it seems
ambiguous.
but it is pretty ambiguous because one of the things that this particular text in Genesis 2 does not go into, because it doesn't care, right? This particular text in Genesis 2 doesn't care about how long it took to do anything.
Right.
So we just don't know. We don't know if that is a general time frame or whether this is an author who actually thinks everything was done in a single day.
Right. So we have a few things. Let's see. Casual Sleeping Dragon says, "What if it's a trill and uvular?" I'm actually not entirely convinced that that is physically possible. Yeah, I'm not sure you just
sound
did
like
that.
a gurgle.
Yeah, but the thing is, that sounded like you were doing a fricative. I'm not sure you can actually do a trill, uvular. And oh no, looks like you can. It has been documented. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think I could do it, but there are symbols for a voiced and unvoiced uvular trill in the IPA pulmonic consonant chart, which means that it has been documented in some speech of some people. Now I don't know if the chart that I'm checking out now is separating out pathological, because there's a separate subchart for pathological consonants and other sounds that only occur in pathological speech, like speech impediments. So I'm not positive that it's separating those out, because I don't remember the pathological symbols, because I don't ever look into, like, you know, speech pathology. So yeah, it looks like it is possible. And the answer is, I don't know. You would have to probably, like, check that out on, like, Wikipedia. I think they have sounds for their IPA chart. It's International Phonetic Alphabet, not Indian Pale Ale. Yeah. So yeah, that's what I would suggest. Unless, of course, that was just a joke, which it very well could have been. Renee, Intellectually Gerrymandered Reborn, for $2 says, "I've always found uvular R's easier than trilling." Yeah, if your language doesn't...
They are, but only if you don't grow up hearing trilling.
Yeah, that's the thing.
I can't trill.
No?
No.
You're just gonna, like, relax your tongue the right way and just...
Shut up.
Like you're making a cat purring noise or a machine gun sound.
Can you do taps? No. You probably can do taps, and you just don't even know it.
You can do taps.
Probably
it's just faster taps.
Probably.
Yeah, taps are basically just one trill.
I used to double tongue when I played the trumpet. Yeah.
I would say if you're not used to trilling, then yeah, uvular is a bit easier, because you're just shoving the back of your tongue back towards your uvula, and I'm like, okay, wow, that's not hard.
Okay.
Yeah, no, just like, why would you swallow it?
I do find that some people who can do uvular R sounds also have trouble with, like, uvular stops, like, and I don't know why. It's the same tongue position. You just close off the airflow. And some people just have trouble with it.
Yeah, that one does challenge me, though.
Hey.
Whatever.
Nether6 Her, who's been a member for 12 months and is at the Tetchpod level, says, "It doesn't take an expert to spot BS on this level." True. Sir Mixalon says...
hey, so before... Well, time out, Dennis. Or before you read this next super chat, can I just say how appropriate it is that Sir Mix-a-Lot says God has given you 100 R's.
Yes.
Amazing. Oh my god.
So in Akkadian, the R sound is also reconstructed. So I thought so though I absolutely hate it, makes it a bit less unlikely a language like ancient Hebrew might have had it. I'm still pronouncing it. You're pronouncing it though? I mean,
listen,
hey,
I already put this in the chat. I'm team tap or trill, but that's because I have a heavy, like, Latin American Spanish bias. So
I'm
much better with gutturals. So I'm, my pronunciation tends to be more in the range.
You grew up near people who speak French.
Yeah. I'm going to say that if Akkadian actually is using and the phonotactics and conjugation and whatnot in Hebrew is treating resh as if it's in the same group as the guttural consonants, that does lend me towards thinking that the ancient pronunciation probably was uvular. But that doesn't mean anything for how you should say it now.
That we've been going through spend extreme amounts of time reminding you that our the Raish is
Guttural.
treated as a guttural.
Yeah,
So,
it in terms of the rules
mhm,
for constructing verbs, working
vowels and all that.
constructs and those sorts of statements in Hebrew. The Resh follows the same rules, right, as other
Mhm.
known gutturals.
Which
So-
makes on its own, it makes it very
Fine.
likely that when these rules were established, in terms of like, you know, the historical linguistics, that it was in
Mhm.
fact guttural, because
Yep.
you typically don't see those kinds of patterns just like randomly grab a sound from a different part of the mouth.
No.
So,
Mm.
all right, here we go.
Or it uses the word day to refer to the entirety of creation history. So right there,
So it
Except
could be a single
the
day.
evening and the morning were day one.
Well, he's
I
talking
think
about Genesis
he's
2
still
now.
talking about Genesis chapter 2.
Yeah, the thing is,
Four,
Oh my god,
right?
okay,
But
we're
yeah,
going
it's
after
still-
two.
at best, the use there is ambiguous, and we can't make a determination.
At best.
Yeah.
Because,
but
again,
also-
I just have to point this out, because that author didn't care.
Right. He's not
Right.
interested in telling you about how
No.
long
Un
things took.
momento,
Not at all.
compas.
Oh.
Un momento. So I want to just note here grammatically that this is one of the cases where my Hebrew classes are coming in handy. So Genesis 2:2. Bayom hashvi'i. In the day, or on the seventh day. Those are the hashvi'i, that's the definite article, the seventh. Okay. Bayom is using the vowels to indicate a definite article that just got like assimilated in. You wouldn't say bahayom. You have to
Fair
take the vowel from the hey because it gets assimilated. So that's like double definite. The seventh. The day the seventh. Like, how is he getting around this? Reasons?
Yeah. Also, Triceratops is repeatedly putting in the Arabic letters ra and ghain, and I'm not sure what you're trying to express to me. So, I'm sorry. Oh, there's
That
Mothra.
these are
Drink
also
forgot.
gutturals in Arabic?
Actually, so ra is a little weird, because you'll get people who will treat it like it is what, I mean, it's usually pronounced as, right, which is like an alveolar trill. But then there are other times when, and the only time it really matters much in Arabic is when the word is in contact with the definite article, al, because when al comes in front of basically fronted consonants, so like alveolar, labiodental, or bilabial, a lot of times it takes on, it, instead of actually having the L quality, it just geminates the first consonant in the word. And so you have a short, and then you geminate the first consonant if it's a fronted consonant, and then you have the rest of the word. So, like,
He's not beating the charges.
like, light is nur, and the light is not al-nur, it's an-nur. You gotta geminate the N. That's because it's a fronted consonant. And so sometimes it happens with R, like sometimes you'll have Arab, the Lord, instead of Al-Rab. But then sometimes you don't, and it seems to be a dialectical thing. So I don't actually know the degree to which Arabic's Ra comes from a guttural consonant. It's not consistently treated like it is, but it's also not consistently treated like it's a alveolar consonant either. So I'm not actually sure.
Jillian Wren notes, Dapper's I am not a linguist shirt is raising a lot of questions that the shirt answers.
Why? Because I took 3 semesters of Arabic? When I skipped Arabic 1?
I'm sorry. I've been processing over the last couple of minutes just what, because Hugh Ross thinks that these days equal ages, right? Like long periods of time, of actual time. So I'm very curious to know what he thinks was happening on the seventh day. Like, was this a long period of time when just nothing happened?
I think he sees that as most of the Cenozoic, honestly.
But
And nothing
either
happened.
way,
Well, no, lots of things
God,
happened.
Nothing
just
happened.
not
so,
creative
but
stuff.
what does that mean?
was
when
millions of
says
years
that
of
God
nothing.
rested. He just
wasn't-
took the whole
He wasn't.
Cenozoic period off.
He wasn't actively creating. he might have been doing things, but it wasn't creating new species or creating oceans or something like that. He wasn't actively creating. He might have still been tinkering with some things or interacting in some way with the world, but it wasn't in a creative aspect. And if you want to know what the exact distinction is between God interacting in a creative way and a non-creative way, I don't know. I'm not a theologian. I've never been a member of any church that had this position, so I can't tell you.
Oh my god.
Just the word there, Shabbat or Shabot, depending on how like the marking is. That's to like stop or to rest.
Oh,
it's like,
and it's you know, it's not a. This is a word that we see all throughout the text to describe all sorts of things that people stop doing. Right?
Stop doing. And the word right before it, wouldn't you know, it's asa, which is to work or make or like do stuff. So it's like he stopped that. So what?
I mean, look, what I know is that there is a concept in some parts of Protestantism in which God has a creative capacity which he stopped at the end of the period of creation as described in the first couple chapters of Genesis. And that his interactions since then with the world have been in some way different. And I don't know the details of how that's supposed to work philosophically, but I do know that that is a distinction that comes up in certain parts of Christian theology. I'm most familiar with it in Protestant theology. I don't know if it's also a thing in Catholic theology. I don't remember it being a thing in much of like Oriental or Eastern Orthodox theology. But then again, what do I know? I only learned like a few days ago that apparently the Oriental Orthodox do believe in original sin, when I kind of thought they didn't.
Really? Okay.
Apparently, based on what I was looking at. But then again, I also don't know how reliable that information was. So I'm now kind of just in a weird thing where like, I don't know what the position on original sin is for the Oriental Orthodox. I know the Eastern Orthodox are not big fans. They're like, not really, no. You're not morally culpable for sins of other people from the ancient past. That's not a thing.
Yeah. And Judaism's like, original sin? No.
Oh, yeah. The Eastern Orthodox position is basically like the fallen nature of humanity and the world might explain your particular proclivity to do things that are bad, but you're still responsible for the things you do that are bad, regardless of whether or not it's caused by your ancestors.
There in Genesis 1 and 2, we clearly have the possibility that these days could be consecutive long periods of time.
No, you don't.
Yeah, Genesis 2 doesn't help you at all with that.
Not at all.
It doesn't hurt you on that either, I guess. It's just not relevant at all. I'm taking a drink for that.
And this is where you would go to the other 65 books. And I've written a book called The Matter Days where I make the point, if you read all 66 books of the Bible...
Yeah,
well, that answers which Bible we're talking about.
Established the...
So, should we talk about the 66 books of the Bible?
I mean, it is certainly interesting how recent a development it is that the Bible has 66 books. It's like not even 3 centuries old.
Yeah, it's not even.
Right.
And it was a cost-saving measure. It wasn't like theological.
Yeah,
It was just like,
this
we
is
could
literally
just print this out and save a lot of money on printing costs.
Yeah, this is theology by capitalism, is what that is.
Yeah.
It's like, man, having more than 66 books sure does cost a lot. What if we just didn't?
Cut it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Vadim is
literally
trying to tell you in the chat that Grechopadenia is a thing in Orthodoxy. Who do you think we are?
I mean, I don't know enough.
That's the
Russian.
The fall.
Yeah, I'm not saying the fall isn't a thing. I'm saying there's a distinction between original sin and the fall.
Mm-hmm.
And the fall is what creates the curse on the world and creates the tendency towards sin. But that's not the same thing as being morally culpable for the sins of Adam and Eve, which is the standard position in most of Western Christianity. But it is not the standard position in all of Eastern Christianity that you are morally culpable. So that if you were born and then died, you would still have the sin of Adam and Eve as part of a problem for you going to heaven. That is not a universal idea in Christianity, and there's much more skepticism of that idea and rejection of it in the Christian East than in the Christian West. But that is not a negation of the fall, which is the thing that creates that proclivity towards sin, and also is the reason why the universe just kind of sucks in some ways.
Yeah. Vadim adds that Grechopedenia is a portmanteau of sin and fall. Russian got it all covered.
Thanks, Russian. I don't know enough Russian. Or Slavonic.
Spasiba, Rutskia.
Maybe I should,
Right.
I'll just not learn Russian. Instead, I'm just going to learn Old Church Slavonic, so that way I can talk
Old
to
Church
literally...
Slavonic. I knew you were going to say that.
Yep.
I knew you were going to say that.
That way I will only be able to talk to elderly Russian priests, and that's it. That's the only people. Well, also elderly, like, Belarusian priests, Ukrainian priests,
Yeah,
the whole, like,
Belarusian
Slavic
priests.
group.
Slavic priests.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Except for the Poles, who are Catholic, so they would know Latin.
And the Romanians, who
might know Old Church Slavonic.
make it crazy.
Actually,
a few of them actually might, because they're heavily Orthodox there. So.
Yeah, but I don't actually know what
crazy,
the liturgical.
Man. I don't
know what the liturgical language is for the Romanian Orthodox Church. Let's find out, because you know what?
I'll find out.
Yeah,
I have to tell you, in my very anecdotal understanding of Finnish culture,
Mm-hmm.
It's Romanian.
Okay.
Well, I was going to say I feel a bit of a kinship with the Finns, with the Suomi, because it feels a little bit Canadianic in the sense that my impression is that a very clear feature of Finnish culture is distinguishing themselves as the guys that
aren't the other guys
couldn't conquer.
Yeah.
Or, they staved off the Russian Empire. So
they also pretty famously had a pretty exceptional sniper during World War II.
Yeah, they did. Oh. Yeah, they did.
That's a lot of confirmed kills on that guy.
Yeah.
Stacking bodies.
So the Romanian
Slavonic was the main language used until like the 1500s
in Romania,
and it was liturgical. Yeah, and liturgical until the 1600s. But they kind of swapped that out. So it was Slavonic, and then they just were like, "No, we're gonna use Romanian."
That's a little weird, because
listen, Romania's always
it's already
the
a weird
redheaded
place,
stepchild of the Romance languages, and it's
Yeah.
just a weird in pretty much every other way. So
Actually, using Slavonic was one of the reasons that that lots of Slavic areas went with Eastern Orthodox Church, because they were both the Orthodox and the Catholics were sending missionaries, and the Catholics were like, "Yeah, we're going to do all of our services in Latin," and then there's like Cyril and Methodius who were like, "Hey guys, what if we translated everything into like a slightly artificial unified language that all of you can understand, and then we can do church that way?" And turns out people like to be able to understand what the hell the priest is saying.
Yep. Vulpix, half fox, half Pokemon, says Dapper's a Ventru who only feeds on elderly priests.
I'm going to hit play. When it addresses the question of creation, it's clear that it's 6 consecutive long periods of time.
It's not
clear. It is not long periods of time! Stop lying!
Just take it.
Damn it.
That is
and that's something for us to take a look at. So some who are watching, someone in our audience, members of the jury, as it were, will hold to a young Earth model, and they'll say 6 literal days in terms of 24-hour periods.
I mean, that does seem to be what the author intended. So, I mean, if
yes.
Those who hold to an old Earth position might say, yes, 6 literal days, but those days literally mean long periods of time in that context.
Right. Except
that's not how that works.
Yeah. When you have a morning and an evening, or an evening and a morning, because, we're counting days. Yep. Anyway, yeah, you're talking about the period that it takes for the Earth to go around its axis. That's what that is.
It's very important, too, given that it culminates in a 7-day week.
Right.
And that is literally the origin of the Sabbath. I just
wow.
And I've said this to people who are de-agers before. I'm like, so should you work for 6,000 years or 6 million years or 6 billion years and then take 1 billion off? Like, what are you arguing for?
6 billion and then 1 billion off. That sounds like a better deal than the Scientology, or worse deal, than Scientology, where you sign the 1 billion year contract.
Right. Good grief.
So fun fact, y'all. And this is a bit of a tangent, but I think it's interesting. there seems to be, those who have done some work on the Sabbath, there seems to have been.
But you're not supposed to do that. That's the whole point.
Very funny. That was as good as my R's joke. So the people who've worked on this have noted that in the earliest biblical texts where the Sabbath is mandated or spoken of or encouraged, it actually doesn't even seem to be a 7-day week. It almost looks like in some of these earlier layers, it might be 15 days or 14 days, I should say. It might be 28 days. It might just be the space of any festal observance. So it does seem like the attachment to the 7th day or the 7-day week is something that came along later.
Well, my recollection of like what we know from other ancient texts, which is not super reliable, is because just me, is that there were a number of like week-like cycles in different societies in the ancient Near East before these texts.
And this is just on the division of the lunar month, right?
Right.
Into 4 quarters. Following the moon. So it's kind of it's a natural thing, but then is the Sabbath, and this is a legitimate question with regards to lots of the biblical texts, is the Sabbath a quarter or is it a half? And it's not always clear, right? Is it 7? Is it 14? Don't know.
Also, Sabbath years probably were never an actual real thing.
No.
Very unlikely. I remember even reading that as like a high schooler and thinking, this would be horribly disruptive to like agriculture, like the things that people need to stay alive. Like, how would people go and actually do this practically? This seems basically impossible. Yeah, and also, like, if you knew that every loan would be forgiven at the end of like 6 years, that would change like the lending practices dramatically. If you knew that like every single your slaves would go free, that would change like how the market for them would work fundamentally in ways that I don't think would reasonably work. Not that I'm condoning the market itself, but like you have to understand that when it existed, it worked in a particular way, and it had to work in particular ways in order to be effective for the owners, which again, not for, but like as a practical matter, it did do that. So like, and I remember even like reading that in church, like as in high school, and like thinking, this doesn't make any sense. This couldn't have been a real thing that was actually done. And then I went and looked into it, and they were like, yeah, scholars don't think this ever actually happened. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense.
What do they know? They're all just skeptic atheists.
So I'll say one more thing, and then we should probably continue on this point of the Sabbath. This is actually pretty useful for helping us understand how old this particular story in Genesis chapter 1 actually is. Because if the attachment of 7 days to the concept of Sabbath is a late development,
I tend to think
then,
it is.
And it is, and all the evidence seems to be pointing in that direction, right? Then Genesis chapter 1 is a late text.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Vladimir Jenko says, were slaves freed at Jubilees or after 6 years of service? So it depends, right? So the Jubilee thing, the Jubilees, as far as like an annual, like a 7-year cycle, that wasn't so much of a thing. Now, debt slaves were generally freed after a certain term of service. In real life.
Year meaning like the 50th year?
Yeah.
That's what you meant, right?
Yeah. That's what you meant.
So those I'm not very convinced ever actually happened. But then again, if a rich person wanted to celebrate, many times one of the ways that they would show that they're celebrating and being generous is by freeing some of their slaves, right? That was a thing that people did in the ancient past. It was like, my son is getting married, and as part of the celebration, I'm going to free 3 slaves.
Sure.
Okay, yeah. So that
might
happens.
call that a jubilee,
right?
And let's be clear here too. What's happening is the fallacy of applying a univocal, or as Sean McDowell says, a univocal voice
Odd pronunciation.
to the text.
Yeah.
Where in actual fact, the excuse me, the year of Jubilee is something that is part of the Holiness Code. The 7-year release is part of the Covenant Code. These are different legal traditions.
Yeah.
And it seems as though the Covenant Code is the earlier one. The Holiness Code is updating and also responding to that. So it's so we're two different things taking place, two different conceptions on what the year of release is. Not that it ever actually happened, but these are idealizations of what people thought should.
Yeah.
Well, that's another thing
thing
is, the
that
law
they
isn't.
don't talk about a whole lot in these like evangelical circles, especially, is that laws, especially in that time in the Levant, were written to display how great the rulers were. Like, look how progressive and amazing and enlightened we are. Check out the laws we have, like the laws of Hammurabi.
God's pretty great.
Yeah, it's like, hey, check out how amazing Hammurabi is as a leader. Everybody should look up to him. Those laws weren't aspirational. They weren't necessarily enforced that way.
Yeah.
It's definitely not the way we think of laws, where we're putting in protocols for how you can behave and what happens if you don't. We don't write them that way.
Well, the thing is, we have the judgments from Mesopotamian courts that have been preserved, that are still around, and they generally don't reference these prestige law codes. Instead, they reference things like previous cases, the sense of justice that the judge has, things like that. Which means that these laws were just sort of like knickknacks that the ruler erected in cities for his own greatness. And like, sure, they looked cool and they were impressive, but if you went to the judge saying, hey, this guy's ox gored my slave to death, I would like to, and then you like reference the code of Hammurabi, like, the judge is probably not going to care. That doesn't mean he's not going to care about the goring. He's just not going to care about the law code and what it says he should do.
It's your fault since you brought it up, Dinosaur. But one of the things that I learned from my good friend Dr. Joel Koritko, who's written a commentary on the Book of Exodus and investigated at least the entire Greek corpora of legal material. Something that he pointed out to me is that this is the goring ox is a prevalent trope throughout the ancient Near East. That's something that's known. But the really interesting thing about this is that it's something that probably just never happened.
I don't know about never, but it does seem unlikely.
Very, very rare. Like, it's just it's one of those. Yeah, it's
You definitely, like, the more you read these codes, the more you start thinking like, wow, oxes did be goring people. And
so it is. And I brought it up because it's a stereotypical thing that occurs in these law codes.
Exactly. Yes.
I think that's why it was my example.
I think the fact that it's a trope also tells you a lot about what these law codes were intended for and how they actually functioned.
They weren't just for practical everyday use, because that isn't a practical everyday law that happens to come up much.
Yes.
Yeah. But in contrast, you have the Tanakh talking about, like, hey, if you loan something to your neighbor and it breaks while they have it, they need to, like, compensate you, which is a practical law.
So it's the kind of law that would actually be enforced.
It's not something that's unlikely to happen, unlike, your ox is just going off goring people left, right, and center. Just...
Yeah.
Oxes apparently how are treating these oxes?
To be fair, though, oxes are dangerous animals. They are dangerous.
Yes, they are.
You don't fuck with an ox.
Yes, they are.
Sir Mix-a-Lot says God has back.
Yeah.
Sir Mix-a-Lot says God has back for 100 Argentinian pesos. Says one thing that always caught my attention is that, as far as I recall, there's no story in the Bible of a slave being freed or a loan being forgiven in this fashion. Like, as in, like, the Sabbath years or in the Jubilee. I don't.
It's part of the Jubilee.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Or even a 7-year release.
Yeah. Although, to be fair,
the closest I think you could get is Jacob and Laban.
Yeah. I was also going to say, I also don't remember too many stories about Hebrew debt slaves in the Bible in the first place, like, at all, which I don't think is good evidence that it didn't happen. So,
like I said, my
yeah.
case here is you can pull from Jacob and Laban.
Yeah, that's true. I
And
should
he
say
was-
oxen.
He was, yeah, he was in such a predicament that he went back for an additional 7 because Laban tricked him with the wrong wife, which was a dick move, to be honest.
Yeah. But he did get the right wife eventually.
Eventually, and he also walked away with 2 handmaids. So,
Hey, you gotta love concubines, right?
yeah.
It's like all the good parts of having a wife and none of the bad parts. It's literally how it was conceived. It was basically like, hey, you get to have legitimate heirs and whatnot, but you don't have all like the financial responsibilities to like her father and to take care of her and make sure she's treated well as like all your other wives.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
wonder if a man wrote that story.
Or would just, well, first, yeah, almost certainly, but second, even if it hadn't been, I mean, it was written in an extremely patriarchal context where even if a woman had written it, it's not like she was going to ignore the fact that concubinage was a thing.
Yeah. And even the establishment and justification of patriarchy is in Genesis 3, so what are you gonna do?
Lieutenant Fitzarray says, are Serratus name customs like Bajorans, where naming, calling someone with just the second name is only for close friends and relatives? Well, I mean, it's not as familiar, right? But yes, the given name is the second one, as we've established today, in response to Siluf trying to get one over on me. That's how the Dapper lore works, by the way. Anytime
It's just
someone's
very
like,
ad hoc.
yeah,
Okay.
anytime anyone's like, but what about this Dapper? I'm like, oh, well. And then additional lore comes out, and I was right the whole time.
And what are they gonna do? Take you to dinosaur court?
Yeah, good luck. The Dinosaur Court does not like to have human litigants.
Yeah,
I would have thought dinosaur
Humans
court
don't
went
have
the way of
standing
the
in dinosaur court.
dinosaurs, didn't it?
Sorry, say that again, Kip?
I would have thought dinosaur court went the way of the dinosaurs, didn't
I mean, it mostly did, but like, there's lots of ravens around here. I could convene a murder, and we could have
Okay.
Dinosaur Court that way.
it? Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like humans definitely don't have standing if the crows are involved.
Or I could convene an unkindness of ravens, which is another fun one.
Others might have different frameworks as well. I think that the important thing, and I've appreciated this, by the way, RTB has done this, and I keep using RTB, by the way, and friends, if
It's reasons to believe.
you are not familiar, and you likely are, but in case you're not, RTB is Reasons to Believe, the ministry
Yeah.
that Hugh
I got
Ross
that.
founded. Fuzz Rana is currently the president of it, and
Oh, I didn't know that part. Okay. I
How
thought
old
that
is
it was
this video?
I don't remember exactly, but I think it was like a few years ago. So I guess I was talking to the president of Reasons to Believe a few weeks ago. Okay, cool. No, Fuzz does know that we're doing this, and I gave him the link to the first one. I don't think he's watching, but that's okay.
Oh, that's sad.
I've had the pleasure of working with them in various areas around the world, in fact, and right here in the United States. I've noticed something during Q&As, whenever you guys get pressed on the controversy over the age of the Earth.
Now, I want to point out
There's
there
a
is
controversy
no
over
controversy.
the age of the
There is
Earth.
no controversy.
The controversy,
It's old.
the controversy over the age
It's
of the
old as
Earth.
balls.
The made-up controversy.
Yeah, the controversy
Yeah.
over the age of the Earth is exactly the same as the controversy over the shape of the Earth. There are
Yeah.
people who are wrong about it and are loudly wrong. That doesn't make it a controversy, right?
Yep.
If a guy goes out wearing like just cargo shorts with a placard that says that the end is nigh and you have to turn to Xenu to be saved, that doesn't mean that there's a controversy about whether or not Xenu can save you from the imminent end of the world. That just means there's a loud weirdo.
Mhm.
You guys really, I
Hey,
think,
how many
in
days
a
are
very-
left until the final experiment, by the way?
I feel like it's like a week. I think it's like a week.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Waiting.
Don't quote me on that
Very
though, because I don't
exciting.
actually remember
Very
the dates.
exciting.
But I do seem to remember. I think it's like it might be 10 days. Like it's really
Excellent.
soon. Yeah. And I am looking forward to all the Flat Earth cope, because while I don't do a lot of Flat Earth
Mhm.
content on this channel, I do follow a lot of the Flat Earth debunking content.
Mhm.
And oh boy, am I am just wondering.
You're coping already.
Like-
It's great.
Yeah, but it's going to be so much greater afterwards.
Oh, yeah, it will.
What's
Oh,
Witsit
yeah.
Gets It going to do after he watches the sun stay up for the entire day and go south of him?
He's
I'll tell you what he's gonna do.
He's going to do what
He's
he
gonna
always
cope.
does and
Yeah.
pretends to do math,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
They can't do math.
He's just gonna cope.
Yeah. The weird thing is, like, I do math as a fairly routine thing. Like, I was explaining to someone, like, when I do Blender, I'm usually actually working in somewhere between 4 and 6 dimensions for most things. And that's just a pretty normal thing for me to do. And then I realized
you're
that, like...
an n-dimension enjoyer.
Yep. And then I realized, like, yeah, these flat earthers cannot even think in a third dimension. Like, that one is way over their heads, and they live in a 3-dimensional world. So, yeah. And in case you guys are wondering, Blender has X, Y, and Z, but also U, V, and W axes that don't always come up, but they often come up. And it's very rare that I don't use all of those extra axes.
You know what? I just realized it's going to be huffing copium like Frank from Blue Velvet. If you get that reference, we can be friends.
Very diplomatic and ambassadorial and in charitable way. Describe your position, but allow for the fact that people might differ on these things. So if you wouldn't mind, if I could put you on the spot for a moment.
Oh my God, get to the point.
Hey, wait a minute, Hugh, it's got to be 6 literal days or you're not a Christian. Without going into the merit of the 6 days.
I've literally never heard anyone actually take that position, that if you don't believe in 6 literal days and 6,000 years ago, you're not a Christian. Even Ken Ham doesn't say that.
I was going to say, I've heard Ken Ham and Kent Hovind intimate that if you don't believe it's a literal 6-day creation, then you're just...
I've heard them say things like that you're
you just don't believe the Bible.
They're concerned.
Yeah, they're concerned.
But they have actually come out, or at least, I don't know about Hovind, but at least Ken Ham has come out and said, this is not an issue. This is not a salvation issue.
Yeah, it's not a salvation issue.
Right? So Baba
it just
Ali...
means you're just kind of getting by on the skin of your...
Baba Ali says, what do you use the extra dimensions for? And that's a good question. So I'll try to give that pretty quickly, and then we'll get Hugh Ross's answer, and then we're going to get out of here. The U and V axes are usually for mapping 2-dimensional textures onto the surface of 3D models. So a 3D model is usually set up as a collection of polygons, and so each point on the polygon has a location in X, Y, and Z space. But you can also assign it a position in UV space, and then you can use 2D image textures, or even 2D procedural textures in UV space to map the location of what part of the texture goes where based on that UV coordinates for those same points and faces that exist in X, Y, and Z space. The W axis is usually used for procedural textures where I want to be able to vary the exact look of a texture. And so procedural textures can usually come in 2, 3, or 4-dimensional options. The 4-dimensional looks just like the 3-dimensional, except that there's a 4th dimension that you can translate the texture through, which will smoothly change it to different varieties. You can also use it to animate textures in a smooth way. So for instance, if you have some clouds that you want to have go by the camera, but in addition to moving in physical space, you also want them to sort of like slowly change, like real clouds do. What you can do is you can drive which parts of the cloud are actually, cloud versus clear sky with a noise texture, and then you can translate that texture through the W axis to get a smooth morphing of the clouds as you go. And that is what those 3 extra dimensions are for in Blender. So, and I feel like maybe that went over Vishanti's head, based on how she's looking at me now. Well, that's the quick explanation. That's what they're for. I don't know what to tell you. All right.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah, really.
It's not that complicated.
Okay.
It's just 3 extra axes to think about. You don't even usually need all of them. I rarely go more than 5 on any one model at a time.
Just casually saying this stuff.
I mean, it's part of my job.
Talk about the way in which you guys actually do this in a more charitable fashion. You say, okay, here's my response to that in terms of how Christians have differed on this issue.
And yeah, we're on time too, Speed.
This is not a salvation issue. It's not even a significant doctrinal issue. It doesn't show up in any of the creeds of the church, even the most detailed creeds of the church. Those that give great detail in the doctrine of creation do not address the age of the earth or the age of the universe.
That is true. You're not going to find the age of the universe in the Nicene Creed or the Apostles' Creed.
So why?
Probably because they didn't care that much.
Why do you care this much?
Well, because he wants... The thing is, his goal is to make the Bible seem as plausible to modern readers, if taken fairly literally, as being true as he possibly can. Because he then thinks that the more likely you can find it that the Bible is telling you the truth about history, the more likely you are to believe it And he thinks that his interpretation of it will be the interpretation that you will come to, and therefore you will join or stay in his particular section of Christianity. That's why. It's all about proselytism and retaining people and keeping them in. So
it's ghetto. This is Christian apologetics, right?
Basically.
Is a ghetto. It's about preaching to the converted in order to ensure that they remain converted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and also I do think that part of his goal is to get new people in.
Maybe
making it try to seem more reasonable.
I think that's.
I don't think.
Yeah, I think it's. I think it's part of
that goal.
I think it's part of the design. But it's a terrible miscalculation. It really is.
Lady Novelist Kent's Tender Touch a Chicken's Tail for $1.99 says, I feel like you must play 6-dimensional chess also. Well, I know that Bent has, I think he has some 5-dimensional chess. It's like 4 dimensions, but then there's also time travel, which gives you like a 5th dimension. I don't normally even play 2D chess much. I'm not much of a chess guy. Not because like I hate it or anything. I just usually do other stuff. I have seen some rules for some 3D chess that mimic the props from Star Trek for 3D chess, which isn't.
Oh yeah, I mean they've been selling their 3D chess for a long time.
Yeah, you can play that 3D chess.
It's an actual game, right?
It is an actual game. But
I would have thought you would have
played
played that one.
It's also not really 3D. It's actually 2D with movable board pieces that just happen to physically be arranged, but the actual height doesn't mean anything in the game. So fundamentally, it's a 2D game.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So there is that, because that is one thing. Is like just because something is built in 3 dimensions, it doesn't mean that it operates in 3 dimensions.
I mean, chess is built in 3 dimensions.
Exactly, but it's actually a 2-dimensional game, right? Because picking the queen up and stacking her on top of a bunch of poker chips doesn't do anything. It doesn't mean anything for the game.
And it's so funny though, because even though it looks like it's 2D, you still need the 3rd dimension in order to play it. So
yeah.
How about that?
Well, I mean, if you play it on a computer screen, you don't.
Sure.
You can play computer screen chess 2D.
That's fair.
But I also I also had a discussion about like what would it mean to add another dimension to a script, like a written language. And I mentioned that like Mayan glyphs are actually 3D. They have 3 axes that you have to read them in. And it took a while to get that across to someone. So it was like, I don't get it. I'm like, look, you have to start at the back of a glyph, then read the next one closer to you, then read the next one closer to you. Then you can move to the right. And then finally, when you've done that for the entire row of glyphs, then you can go down a row. And you can read front to back, then to the right, then front to back.
And the only thing that like is easy to grasp about Mayan glyphs is the numbering system. Everything else is like, well, good luck.
Yeah, screw you. You're done.
This is the plot of like so many alien contact films. This is Contact.
Arrival.
Yep.
And Arrival, right? Do you guys Arrival for sure? But you guys remember Contact?
Mm-hmm. With Jodie Foster.
With Jodie Foster.
Yep, Jodie Foster.
You have to think like a Valerian, which means you have to think in 3 dimensions.
Which is how a lot of people think anyway.
I'm like, okay, that's how we think anyway.
Yeah.
All right.
It would be more impressive if you had to do it in 4 dimensions.
Sorry, not a Valerian, a Vegan.
Yeah, whatever.
This
I wasn't gonna call you on it.
Rye is almost gone.
Well, my whiskey is. Yeah, there's still some in here. But hey, that is it for us for this.
Oh.
The plan is the next one is going to be Dapper Reacts 100, right? So what I am thinking is we might do an extra long show. We might go a 3rd hour. And the plan right now is to take a look at Bodhi Hodge's Tower of Babel book. Again, we're not going to go through the entire thing because a lot of it is just boring stuff I don't care about. Like, what did the tower look like? I could not possibly care less about the answer to that question. I just don't care.
We have but this is the thing, Dapper. We have pictures of it. We do. We actually have pictures in antiquity of the Tower of Babel.
Okay.
We know what it looked like.
I mean, I believe you, but it's just one of those things where it's just like, I don't know how it matters, because the reason I was paid to acquire this book to respond to it was because apparently it has a bunch of like linguistics nonsense. And while I'm not a linguist in the same way I'm not a paleontologist, I am a reasonably well-informed layperson on the matter. So I am interested in taking a look at those linguistics claims.
I expect it has a lot of historical and literary nonsense in it as well.
And here's the real question: does anyone here think that Bodhi could adequately describe the difference between a nominative accusative alignment, a ergative absolutive alignment, and a tripartite alignment?
Nope.
No, I don't think so either.
Ken Ham does. Does Ken Ham believe it?
He believes in the Tower of Babel, but I would be shocked if Ken Ham was even aware that there are different alignments for the arguments of a verb that a language could use.
Right. That's fair.
Yes.
I'm just waiting for one of them to start accepting the truth of ionizing radiation in their seraphim language, because that is just cool.
Check out the
Hey,
first.
how old is that book?
The Tower of Babel book?
Yeah. When did he publish that?
I don't know. Let's see if we can find out here. Let's see.
Holy shit.
Bodhi.
Vadim says that Bodhi wrote 2 books on fighting Sodom. So he's in 2 books on finding Sodom.
Wow.
That's something.
Oh,
wow.
I really want to make the joke, and I'm not gonna.
So I think it's 2013 is when the book was published. That's what I'm seeing on the Amazon page for it.
Okay.
2013. Wow. I wonder. I'm curious to know, because I know, and this probably.
All right, but then we got to wrap it up after you ask the question, because we're going over.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I'm sorry, but it's probably a product of just how much more visible these Christian nationalist spaces are. But I couldn't help but notice how much traction. Who's the other guy? The super tall guy? Tim
Chaffee.
Chaffee.
Tim Chaffee.
Yeah. He when he published his book on giants, the Christian
you mean about himself?
Nationalist crowd. Yeah. Yes. They were all over that, but I'm very curious. I'm very interested to know if Bodhi got the same treatment.
He's the creationist gigantor. Phuket Word is the flat earth gigantor, and Tim Chaffee is the creationist gigantor.
Yeah.
April
How
Van
big is
Ryn.
Phuket Word?
He's like something like 6'6" or something, I think. I don't actually know for certain, but he's really tall.
I just so everyone knows, I'm not 6'6".
You're just regular height. Average.
April
height. There's like... What?
April Van Ryn, who's been a member for 19 months and is at the annual level, says, AIG is a hammock with all the bananas. Love you guys, with a heart emoji, and we will take a drink for that.
Awesome. April plays flute for the highest.
There you go.
April's lips play flute for the highest.
That does remind me, there was a creationist who foolishly filmed himself in front of a green background, and then I put as the background, because this guy is wildly homophobic, just a bunch of shots of guys' crotches in banana hammocks. That's all that was in the background for that. Yeah. And it was, because here's the thing, right? Like, I don't normally make jokes like that are on like the racy side, but if you're going to be a super homophobe, I will cover whatever you're doing in all of the gayness that is possible.
Yeah, man.
Prepare to be drenched in dicks.
Yep.
As it should be.
Yep.
All right. Well, Vishanti, you have anything coming up online that people might want to know about?
Yeah, I'm going to mirror the stream that I did with Kip from last week, where we debriefed the SBL conference. I'm going to mirror that on my channel in the next 2 days. So it's a surprise. You'll have to tune in. Turn on notifications and subscribe. 2, I am accepting donations to keep myself housed and clothed and so forth. So, yeah, that's another thing. It's not coming up on my channel, but the links to do all of those things and tune in are available on my channel. So subscribe.
Yeah,
For all your money, y'all.
Vishanti has a Patreon. You should go subscribe to it.
Yeah,
at the very least, check it out.
I'm gonna subscribe.
Sir Mix-a-Lot, God Has Back, who's been a member for 31 months, says, Vish, did you get your $25? Looks like you might have to record yourself. If that comes through, you're going to have to record yourself singing.
Oh.
You made a promise.
Oh, yeah, and the Vish list. Thank you, Volpix. The Vish list
Vish
is available. There's books on it. There's tchotchkes. There's also upgraded recording equipment because I want to also do a little more narration work. So, yeah, lots of different things on there. Which reminds me, thank you, Linda Peterson and Fade to Gray, for purchasing things for me off of my Vish list.
All right, Kip, you got anything coming up that people might want to be aware of?
I'll probably do a stream this next week And if I'm doing a stream, I suspect Vish will probably be there
That's
as well.
fair chance. Yeah.
As long as I'm not on jury duty.
All right.
I know that's
also,
gonna be a whack.
Just start loudly talking about jury nullification. You won't be on jury duty.
I know, right? Exactly.
So, but I do have to say, guys, I am still sitting on a 1-hour interview that I did with Dr. Joshua Bowen, where we got to pick the brain of Amahai-Mazar, who is, a giant in Syro-Palestinian archaeology, which was amazing. I'm sitting on that. It's coming out. It'll be on my Patreon, hopefully within the next couple of weeks, but it'll be out soon. But I just finished my edits of the monster interview that I did with my fellow Diablo critic, Dr. Dan McClellan, and Dr. Heath Durrell, who wrote the book on child sacrifice in ancient Israel. The title of the book is Child Sacrifice in Ancient Israel, and
right on the nose.
We did 2 hours and 9 minutes about child sacrifice in ancient Israel. It's an amazing discussion. It's so good. I'm so excited about it. The edits are done. I literally have 20 minutes left to watch of the video before I hit render, and then that's going on my Patreon. And then I have channel memberships too. Channel members get access to all that stuff as well. And then eventually that's going to be published probably in a couple of pieces, just because it's 2 hours and 9 minutes, right? But it is so damn good. I'm just so excited about this video. So that's all coming.
All right. So what's coming up on this channel? So let's see. On Tuesday, we're going to be having Jackson with Jackson. That is not the normal day for it. Normally, Jackson with Jackson is the third Tuesday of the month, but because the third Tuesday of this month is in fact Christmas Eve / Christmas, because remember, Christian holidays traditionally start at sunset, not at dawn or at midnight, which means that on the 24th it will become Christmas at sunset. But because of that, and because Jackson has just recently acquired himself a wife, who I think he wants to do like family things with or something. I don't know. I don't get it. But because of that, he is less inclined to be here for Jackson with Jackson on the 24th. So we're doing it on the 10th, I believe, if I got my numbers right. Yep, the 10th. I pulled up a calendar. So yeah. Instead, the 24th will be a Dapper Kent with Bent. We might do a little bit Christmassy stuff. I don't know. It'll probably say Merry Christmas on the screen, I guess.
Ooh.
Yeah, I know. Fancy. So let's see. Then on the 12th, that's Thursday, at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, same time as the show, I'm going to be premiering Chatting with Creationist Terry, which is a Jackson Wheat mirror. Jackson Wheat and I, a while back, talked to a guy named Terry. He's a young Earth creationist. And if I remember correctly, the conversation remained pleasant, and overall I had fun with it. But, I mean, hey, get ready for a creationist who is going to say very, very, very silly things. And will be absolutely refusing to actually pay attention and take on board anything that anyone else is saying that contradicts what he believes, because that's how creationists tend to roll. Then on Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, over on Top Hats Off, we're going to be doing the next episode of Star Trek Lexington, which will be We Came Forth to Contemplate the Stars. There should be a teaser for that out, hopefully by the end of the weekend or by like Tuesday at the latest. Then on Saturday, it will be Dapper Reacts 100, the 100th episode of this show. And I am going to be pulling out the Bodhi Hodge book. Kip is invited. Vishanti is invited. My plan is to go for at least 3 hours. So, bring snacks, I guess. And yeah.
Is that next week? You said next week?
Yeah, the 14th.
Okay. All right.
So that is what's coming up on this channel for the next week or so. as well as what's happening on the 24th. And also on the 31st, instead of doing what would normally be a Kent with Bent, I'm going to be doing a later show that is going to coincide with midnight, basically across North America. So it's probably going to be about a 4-hour show, and I will be inviting numerous people to drop in and drop out as they can. So that if you're in North America, you will, but also not Alaska, because I'm probably not going to go that late. So if you're in most of North America, you will have the opportunity to watch me say Happy New Year to you on New Year's. So there you go.
It's just arbitrary. Yeah, we know, Neil.
Yep, Neil, we get it.
Like, shut up and let people have fun and enjoy things.
Thanks, Neil.
Well, with that, though, we are out of here. I hope to see all of you on Tuesday. But if you have access to my Discord server, we're going to be watching 5 episodes of Power Ranger Samurai on 1.25 speed so that we can get through them as quickly as possible. Because Power Ranger Samurai is not great, but we have to go through all of them because we said we would. So, yeah, feel free to come over for that. I understand why you might not want to, though. Bye, everybody. Hey, before you leave, I just want to take a second to thank my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Ben Tovand, Ferravara, Tapioca Weasel, Whispers, Elron Teller, Ian Chen, Kelvin Brostick Van Manen, Landon Knoll, Mabdy Babdy, Wallace, Max Cherry, North Texas Fossils, John Ackerman, and Strawberry Vein. It's because of my channel members and patrons whom you're seeing on screen that this channel can stay afloat. Without you, it would all shut down. If you want to join the team, there's a link to join the channel below this video, and there's a link to join the Patreon in the description. On the Patreon, you can get a 10% discount for pledging annually, and either way, you get early access to virtually all of my scripted videos, often 3 to 5 months before they come out for the general public. Thanks for watching.